With delays, you're adding extra sounds to the mix, so there are simply more sounds between the speakers. With short delays, less than 30 milliseconds, you get fattening that appears to stretch a sound between the speakers, again, filling out the mix, making it bigger. Flanging, chorusing, and phasing are all based on short delay times, so they too will tend to make the mix sound bigger and fuller. And of course, reverb is actually made up of hundreds of delays, so it takes up a lot of space in a mix and really fills out the mix tremendously. All of these effects will make a mix fuller, bigger, badder. However, they also make a mix busier. Therefore, if the mix is already busy with a lot of instruments and a lot of notes, it could become muddy. Commonly, these effects are only used when you have room for them. That is, when there aren't too many sounds in the mix in the first place. However, there are times when you might want to make a mix even bigger, even though it's already quite full. This is quite common with heavy metal. With heavy metal and a lot of hard rock, the bigger, the better. The more powerful, the more awesome. Therefore, you might consider adding effects to such a mix, even if things are already crowded. 48 guitars might not seem clean and clear, but if it's so big, it can be really cool. Now, certain types of music are commonly mixed with very few effects in order to create a sparse mix, where every single sound is completely separate from every other sound in the mix, and where each sound is easily distinguishable from all the other sounds in the mix. Bluegrass, acoustic jazz, and some folk music are commonly mixed this way.
It's gonna be okay, be okay, be okay.
Steely Dan is a good example of this style of mixing. Very few effects are used to create as clean and clear of a mix as possible. These types of mixes are normally done with very few or no effects at all. On the other hand, many styles of music are commonly mixed with a good amount of effects to create either a massive wall of sound type of mix or to create a spacious or spacey type of mix like Pink Floyd. It was Phil Spector who was known for first creating these types of mixes. For the longest time, everybody was addicted to clarity. Then Phil came along, started adding more and more instruments to the mix, and started using reverb to really fill out the space between the speakers. His mixes were dubbed the Wall of Sound. These days, we've taken this concept to the extreme. Just how many sounds can we fit in this space between the speakers? A lot of space rock, heavy metal, hard rock, alternative music, grunge, and even new age are commonly mixed with a lot of effects.
Now, if we use the analogy of a mix being like the thoughts in your brain, a clean, clear mix would be like this.
A full or sparse mix might be appropriate depending on the type of person, the nature of the song, and of course, the style of music.
Well, finally, we've now arrived at the last part of this section on effects.
There are a number of ways that you can create movement with effects. First, you can simply turn up or down the amount of the effects in the mix. But you can also change the type of effect or change the parameters within each effect. Needless to say, when you go changing the amount of effects or the type of effects in a song, this dynamic becomes the sole focus of attention for the moment. Some groups like Frank Zappa, Mr. Bungle, and even Pink Floyd have gone to the extreme of creating songs that are based around changing effects. Also, The capabilities of doing this are becoming much simpler now with MIDI control of effects. You can create subtler differences between sections of a song, but again, only if it's appropriate for the song and style of music, and if the people you're working with will let you. We have now covered all of the 4 tools that can be used to create dynamics in a mix. By using the tools together to create combinations of dynamics, we can create all the different styles of mixes in the world. Let's look at how they can work together to create really major dynamics. We can use all 4 tools to create an incredibly powerful dynamic. For example, say we're mixing a love song. We could set relative volumes even so that nothing jumps out and shocks us, so that the mood of the emotion is not disturbed, so that love can grow without distraction. We could set the EQ so that nothing is too irritating in the mid-ranges, so that everything is nice and bright, but not too bright, and so that there isn't too much bass to blow the mood. We could set the panning so that it's balanced like a love relationship should be. We could use very few effects such that the mix is clean and clear, like all our minds should be when in love. And we could refrain from creating any unnecessary movement with the faders, pan pops, EQ, or effects so as to not spoil the mood. Using all of these tools together, we can create one intensely beautiful dynamic, totally appropriate for the song. It's like being another musician in the band. It's like the equipment in the studio is your instrument. On the other hand, if we're mixing some rock and roll or even hip-hop, we might set volume relationships to be quite uneven, really soft sounds, and then it jumps out and grabs your attention, creating a very exciting dynamic. Fun, not boring at all. We could set EQ so that we get lots of highs and lots of lows. Boom! And we could EQ some sounds so they cut through and are edging in the mid-range, making the whole mix jump out and grab your attention, forcing you to dance and forcing you to smile. We could set the panning to be unbalanced, creating tension and making the mix unusual. Let's have some fun. Rock and roll. We could add all kinds of different effects, making the mix interesting at every single moment. Let's not fool around. Let's change the world. Enough of the status quo. We could also have things zooming left and right with panning, volumes going up and down, EQ changing throughout the mix, and effects not only going up and down, but also the parameters of the effect changing constantly throughout the entire mix. When you pull them all together, we can create one hell of an exciting and exhilarating mix. These are 2 extreme types of mixes that we could create with all of the tools, all of the equipment in the studio. There are a million possibilities of dynamics between these 2 extremes, and all mixes in the world fall somewhere in between these 2 extremes. Now, one of the most powerful dynamics that a recording engineer can create is to first create a context. That is, create a mix where all of the tools are working together to create a cohesive style of mix. Then, without warning, completely change all of the parameters of the mix with all 4 of the tools to create a completely different style of mix. Yes did it with Owner of a Lonely Heart. They took a screaming electric guitar sound, and in a single moment it breaks down into a 50s style recording of a drum set with dull EQ and mics 20 feet away. Then, all of a sudden, it's back to a screaming guitar synthesizer type sound that is extremely edgy. the sudden change in mix parameters was quite affecting. Sting also did it with the song Englishman in New York. The song goes from a jazzy groove with a jazz-style mix, very few effects, very clean sounding, to all of a sudden a huge drum sound with tons of reverb. Then all of a sudden we're back to the simple, clear jazz mix. Awesome, exhilarating, and quite interesting. Of course, you can only create such dramatic mix dynamics if it's appropriate for the song. In fact, I'm always on the lookout for bands that have written songs where such cool dynamics are appropriate. This was obviously one of Frank Zappa's favorite techniques. Mr. Bungle has taken the concept to the extreme. Every 30 seconds, the song in the mix changes completely. To do this can be shocking. It can even blow people's minds. It shows people that their reality is just an illusion, that it could all change at any moment. But best of all, it shows perspective. It shows people that they need not stay stuck in their current reality. They only need to put a different mix on the situation. All of the mixes in the world are created with just these 4 tools: volume, EQ, panning, and effects. Every mix for every style of music in the world is made up with these 4 tools and the wide range of dynamics that they can create. The art of mixing is the way the dynamics we create with the equipment in the studio interface with the dynamics apparent in music and songs. Now that we have covered all of the dynamics that you can create with the equipment, we can now begin to explore all of the different relationships between mixing dynamics and the dynamics that people perceive in music. However, we'll let you begin this lifelong exploration on your own.